My name is Average Joe, and I'm a proud geek with expertise in movies, superheroes, and animation.
My name is Beef Pork Ribs. I'm a fine repository of esoteric knowledge, which I suppose most people would qualify as geeky. Though I dabble in many fandoms, my main areas of expertise are anime, movies, and Belgian comics, with a strong recent insurgency of D&D.
Our mission is to bring nerd and geek culture to the masses
by sticking it all under the microscope.
Welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast.
Movies, comics, graphic novels, TV, cartoons, animation, nerds are geeks, entertainment culture. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Power. Nerds and geeks, come gather around the scene. Come and join us in the Bat Jar. Come and tune into Average Joe and his team. Lots of room here in the Bat Jar. When the newest nerdy news drops, these podcast pals put it under the scope. DC, Marvel, Disney, Star Wars, cinematic, multiverses, mega Christmas, strangest franchise. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Power.
Hello there, and welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast, where we put nerd and geek culture under the microscope.
And every time, no matter how often we've seen something like this, we get excited. And then when we see something different, we might get even more excited.
I'm trying to remember the last time I was more excited about something.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I feel like the last time that there was a sequel baited that I actually wanted to watch, that might have been a slight spoiler for what we're going to be saying about Andor, but I also don't think it's, from what I've seen, it's not necessarily a hot take.
So sequel bait, I think I know what that means, but can you just explain it anyway, as if we're writers, or as if we're characters on a TV show, having to explain things we would both understand, but we have to explain to the audience?
Right. Well, sequel baiting. When they leave a bunch of threads slightly undone at the end of a season just so that we want to watch the next one. When they're really banking to do a second season or a second movie. Like Dragon Ball Evolution tried to do.
You must really. Why do you keep? I'm trying to forget that Dragon Ball Evolution ever happened, but you constantly bring it up.
I'm sorry. I remember they had posters with the actor they'd picked to play Vegeta.
Did they really?
Yeah, they
No,
really
you
thought they were
can't-
getting a second movie.
Well, that is just sad. But I'm still eating my breakfast while we record here, so you're gonna get some quality ASMR content. And I'm living with a family right now. At least one of the daughters expressed interest in being on the podcast, so she might just pop in here at any moment, and we might end up having random special guests. Who can say?
Oh, well, there you go. Jam's asleep in the next room, so there's another potential for a surprise guest there.
It's all about the special guest today. Happy Thanksgiving to any Americans who listen to this show. You guys, I guess when this goes out, it'll be Giving Tuesday, the day after Cyber Monday, which is, of course, before Black Friday, which is, of course, after American Thanksgiving. I guess because I grew up with Canadian Thanksgiving, it's so weird to me that you have a holiday where the whole family gets together a month before Christmas, when the whole family gets together.
Yeah, I mean, I always just thought it was weird for a different reason because, well, usually in Canada, by the time you get to American Thanksgiving, it's not harvest time anymore. It's definitely cold. There's snow everywhere. I mean, up here in Calgary, most of it is like actually melted now, which is kind of strange, but like we've had some wintry weather, so it feels a lot more like, it should be a feast of the hearth rather than the harvest.
Well, I mean, there's still parts of the U.S. where it would be harvest time now because of the warmer weather.
Oh yeah, no, I know. Especially like in the further south you go, the more the harvest doesn't really end in some states. So I actually recently was teaching a lesson about that, the differences between the French and English colonies in North America, and one of the big one is, well, the 13 colonies, which became the U.S., could do agriculture year-round, whereas New France up in, the Quebec and Ontario area, they didn't really have any industry in the winter other than, trapping furs that they would sell in the spring once rivers weren't frozen over anymore. Makes a big difference in how much population you can support when you can do agriculture year round and when you definitely can't.
Yes, yes. So yes, happy Thanksgiving to our American friends. And we're just going to go right into today's topic. The Star Wars streaming series Andor has just had its 12th episode last week, I think it was. I was realizing this, Beeper. This is the third Star Wars show that has come out in 2022.
The third.
Because there was the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Then there was Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And now we have this. So this is the first time I can recall having this much Star Wars content in 1 year. And now, of course, we have to ask the question, like, are they different enough to warrant the fact that there's so much of it, or are we just diluting the Star Wars Kool-Aid?
I think a little bit of both. I think that, like, I mean, but we talked about the Book of Boba Fett and how it felt a little bit like they were trying something and then they gave up on trying, and then they put in an episode of The Mandalorian to bump up the rating, and then it didn't super work, and then, you know, they had a cameo from a character from Clone Wars that kind of did things for people that probably was planned, but it felt a little off. But I think that on the whole, interestingly enough, I don't think that it overall is diluted, though, because the content did seem kind of different, but especially I think Andor did what Obi-Wan was trying to do, I think, which is making us care about different characters and different stakes in the universe without relying too much on the main character's name recognition, which was weird for Obi-Wan because it is a huge character and people wanted an Obi-Wan Kenobi show rather than what we got. But in this case, they took something more minor and expanded the universe, and I think that was, what they wanted to do with Obi-Wan, but the fans definitely didn't want that because it was called Obi-Wan, right? If Obi-Wan had been called Tatooine or had been called Little Leia or something like that, I think people would have received it a little bit better.
Yeah, I guess of the three shows, Andor is the one that's relying the least on Star Wars nostalgia, because Cassian Andor is a character who's been in one movie. And I'm sure he has his fans, but certainly not to the degree that people would be fans of Boba Fett as a character, or the Mandalorian show that this version of Boba Fett comes from, or Obi-Wan Kenobi, or the prequels, or, the original movies where Obi-Wan originated.
Jedi Child, Imperial Killer. Sorry, that was my last pitch for a better name for Obi-Wan, so that it would be what it delivered.
All right, well, let's get into it. Secret Origin segment. I saw Rogue One, A Star Wars Story in theaters in December 2016. That's how I was introduced to Cassian Andor. He didn't necessarily stand out to me as my favorite character from the movie. I kind of liked how he came across as Han Solo, but kind of like a dangerous Han Solo. Like, he was, I remember, like, the first scene he's in, he like kills somebody, and you're like, oh, like, this is a rebel with some spice to him. Like, Han Solo just sort of
kills somebody in New Hope.
I guess, yeah, that's true.
Shot first.
But it felt, it didn't. There was an edge to Cassian Andor that I didn't get from other Star Wars characters. So he wasn't necessarily my favorite from that movie. I think I liked the Donnie Yen character. I can't remember the character's name.
Donnie Yen is an underrated actor. He is actually a good actor, not just a martial artist. Like, I think more so than most of the other big names that have come out of Hong Kong, he definitely can do both, I think, better than most. Except,
yeah, I think it's because he was the closest there was to a Jedi in that movie. That's why I liked him so much.
Except action comedy, Jackie Chan is still the king of that, but, like, he's got some good depth to him.
But I did remember Cassian Andor standing out as, oh, like, this is a guy who has an edge to him. And, of course, he had a fun dynamic with K2SO.
I still... Look, this was a great show. I still wanted K2SO to be in it. But as we hinted at, that's not really a spoiler that they're baiting a second season. Well, they're doing a
Well, they're not
second
baiting.
season.
There is going to be a
Yeah.
second season.
So hopefully Alan Tudyk will appear.
So I'm guessing your secret origin would be the same. You would have been introduced to Cassian Andor through the movie.
I think Rogue One is the last Star Wars movie I actually saw in theaters.
Wow.
Actually, or no. Wait, when did Rogue One come out?
It was December 2016.
No, but I mean like in the chronology of movies, which
Oh, it was
like,
after Force Awakens, before Last Jedi.
I can't remember. No, maybe I did see Last Jedi in theaters, but I didn't want to. I think I saw it just because of Mjolnir. But that was the last movie I was like, the last Star Wars movie I was like, yeah, I'm going to go see that.
And do you remember Cassian Andor standing out to you at all when you saw the film? Was he like your favorite?
Not really. There's a lot of other characters, both because they were a little stranger or because they were just better characters. I thought stood out to me a lot more. But but I think, again, I don't think this was meant to, because I distinctly remember when I saw the first trailer for it, I thought Andor was the name of a planet where it was happening. Or system, I suppose, if we're doing Star Wars speech. But yeah, I thought that Andor was the name of the place it was happening, not the name of a character.
It doesn't help that Endor is also a planet in Star Wars.
I think I might have actually thought it was happening on Endor and that it was like something about the construction of the Death Star. Yeah, I think is what I would. Yeah, that because I remember that's what I was expecting. I was expecting it to be something about like, especially because they did talk about, like, I knew Cassian would be in it, and I was like, oh, this is the story of how they stole the plans of the Death Star. Until I realized that's what Rogue One was, and then I was like, oh wait, no, that doesn't make sense. So,
we're at that time of the year where all my laughs are ho ho ho's, guys. So just get used to it. Secret origin segment for
too early. Sorry.
A week to well, I mean, liturgically I'm a day early from Advent, but
Yes,
it's less than a month till Christmas now, so
nah, that doesn't matter. I it's one of my gripes against people. I don't start playing Christmas music until Advent has started.
Well, a secret origin segment for Andor itself. The series in 2017, Disney and Lucasfilm announced they were developing live-action Star Wars TV series for Disney Plus, and there was I guess it was revealed later on that one of them was going to be a prequel to the film Rogue One, which at the time excited me because I really liked Rogue One, and that seemed like a good idea to tell more of that story. And now we have it. It was originally supposed to come out in August 2022, and then they kind of pushed its release farther up into September. I think they learned the hard way that having both Ms. Marvel and Obi-Wan Kenobi airing at the same time on Disney Plus basically made it so that fewer people watched both shows. Like, they were kind of making it so that neither show could be super successful, so they delayed the release of Andor so that it wouldn't interfere with She-Hulk.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I think is pretty good for She-Hulk. Like, not we talked about it. I enjoyed it, but if I had to choose between watching Andor and watching She-Hulk, that would not even be close to a choice for me.
So, Beeper, give us a potential Blu-ray case description for Andor.
The Empire is choking us. Cassian Andor, I'd like you to come with me. How do you know about me?
You can pilot, you can shoot, you can lie.
Let's put a real stick in the eye of the Empire.
This is what revolution looks like.
Cassian Andor is a threat to the Empire.
There is an organized rebel effort.
Let's call it war. I'll die trying to take them down.
Star Wars Andor, 3-episode premiere, streaming September 21st.
You've met Cassian Andor in Rogue One, but How did he come to join the rebellion? Find out in this exciting adventure that follows mounting pressures politically within a post-republic-ish kind of beginning of empire courtesan. Follow builders that are building something mysterious and more corruption happening within the empire. If you like bureaucracy, then watch the Star Wars prequel. This is actually exciting.
So, you know, I made the complaint when we talked about the Obi-Wan Kenobi show that they've made so much content that is set during the age of the Galactic Empire, and that it's getting hard. I said it was getting harder and harder for themselves to not, you know, basically break canon because of things that would be in one thing but then not another thing. With Andor, surprisingly, I did not really feel that. Like, nothing that was discussed or brought up, and maybe because it was all dealing with more minor characters that we haven't seen before, it didn't bother. Like, there was nothing that stood out to me. It's like, that's a plot hole that contradicts what happened in the Han Solo movie or in the Star Wars Rebels show.
Yeah, and I feel like it even almost kind of made. I feel it's weird. This show managed to accomplish, I feel like, a lot of things that other things tried to do but just didn't. I'll get into maybe why that is, because I have it, you know, I think people have, it's not a hot take, but anyways, but like it kind of had that, you know, that weird thing that, not Force Awakens, the second one, Last Jedi tried to do, where it was like, look, there's other people in the Empire than just the Emperor who's evil, and there's like corruptions, and it's a political thing, but it did it better because I think part of why it did it better is because it did still blame the Empire for thing, because it's like, yeah, no, it is because of the Empire that a lot of these bad things are happening. It isn't just disconnected. It isn't just like a societal thing in the galaxy. Like, there is a problem, and the Empire was the problem. Whereas like Last Jedi was a little bit, I don't know. Last Jedi was trying to build up a different universe in some ways, with that, like, oh, the corruption of the rich, and it's like, but there wasn't really that level of it. It was really about, you know, good and evil. Like, Star Wars has never had a lot of nuances, and that's okay. Like, in as far as like morality, it is a very Manichaean world. Manichaean? Yeah, world. It's light versus darkness. It is very purposely black and white. And I think this introduced the idea that yes, people can be corrupted and there can be a corrupt system, but there is a root to it that is evil.
Rogue One was kind of like that too, wasn't it? Like it illustrated that,
yeah,
you know, we've been following these rebels who are the good guys, but the things that they're doing are, you know, in the eyes of the government, like acts of terrorism.
Yeah, but I think this show, because it wasn't, again, because it's set a little bit earlier too, it isn't like full on, ooh, the Empire is, you know, in full force. It is still like things are building up. And especially like the part that happened on Coruscant are like, some people are still pushing back against Palpatine and his regime. They're just not popular right now because, you know, Palpatine was a very good politician. And so
I don't know if you noticed it, but in the very first episode, they mentioned that this is set 5 years before the Battle of Yavin. It says 5 BBY. And the Battle of Yavin is the destruction of the first Death Star. So actually, chronologically, in the Empire only lasted for 19 years. This is like this is in year 14. Like, there's only 5 years left of the Empire. So I think this is arguably probably like the glory of the Empire, like where they were at their peak.
No, so it is okay. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it is closer to Rogue One than I thought it was.
And the Star Wars Rebels show is set at the same time. It's also set 5 years before the first Star Wars film. That series and Andor both illustrate that there really isn't a rebel alliance yet. There are all
Yeah,
these
rebels.
there are rebels. There are all these splinter cells of rebels led by different people, but they haven't brought their resources together yet because they're so terrified of being discovered by the Empire and being taken out that they can't trust anybody, which kind of it leads into a really great espionage, who can you trust theming that this show had that I really found entertaining.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, there was a little bit of that in Rogue One as well, though at that point it was more the leaders knew each other and knew who to trust. They just weren't organized yet.
It might be because of the length, but I think this actually felt like a TV show compared to even The Mandalorian or Boba Fett or Kenobi or
Yeah,
heck, most of the Marvel shows that are on Disney Plus. Like there were story arcs.
yeah. I mean, with the eternal question we usually ask on these, could it have been a movie? It's like maybe it could have been 2 movies, but even there was enough, I think, to even make it divided into 3 if you were doing that. And I think it would still lose something if you made it 3 movies. Like it definitely, yeah, it did feel like it was built with purpose. And well, you were talking about one of the who can you trust thing, and that I don't think that would have worked in a movie, right? Like having the kind of espionage and counter espionage. It's something that works really well in a TV show, like revealing who's working for who and where. But in a movie, you kind of have to get to it quickly, and then it loses a little bit of the suspense, or a lot of the suspense, really.
And then beyond that, I don't know, maybe because again it was like built as a whole TV season and not just like a limited miniseries. You follow the stories of several different characters who don't interact with each other.
Yeah, that's and whose connection is very tenuous and probably won't be revealed until the next season.
And you actually like follow the stories of some people in the Empire in this show, which don't really recall ever happening in a Star Wars movie or show before. Maybe it's in a book somewhere that I haven't read.
Well, you do follow the Inquisitors a little bit.
I suppose. I mean, they're mostly there to. It feels like the scenes with the Inquisitors, like in Obi-Wan, are just sort of there to provide exposition. It's like,
No, I
have
was
we
talking
found
about
Obi-Wan
Rebels.
yet? We need to find Obi-Wan.
In Rebels, they have a bit more of a spotlight, and some of them have a little bit of growth and character.
That's also true. But and what was surprising is, Andor's the main character, and he's kind of, his actions kind of become the launching point for it gets the story going. And all these people are impacted by by his decisions. And it was really cool. It's not really until the final episode that a lot of the principal characters are even in the same location. Like they don't even interact. They're all just on the same planet kind of thing.
Well, in a kind of much more, in some way, accelerated way, it does feel a little bit like, to some degree, like Game of Thrones. Like the first season is very focused on one storyline, even though it does still follow several point of view characters, but it's a lot more focused on a couple of like 2 major events that just trigger everything that keeps happening afterwards. And it felt like it was a little bit like, yeah, like Andor was the trigger for what's happening, but he wasn't really directly involved with a lot of the things that are happening.
And it was interesting following Imperial characters because you can kind of see like the system's so large that the efforts the rebels were making to make tiny thefts and stealing things from tiny outpost locations, like you kind of see the web of the Rebel Alliance in effect, and that it took someone kind of thinking outside the box to think, hey, like maybe these things that are happening all over the place are actually connected to each other.
Yeah. But I mean, that's historically true of, like, I mean, the biggest parallel you can draw probably is with the French Revolution, and it was a lot of individual people doing what they can to hurt the occupying force, and eventually they started getting organized. But at first, it was just individuals doing things, right? And that is a pretty realistic approach to it.
Now, unfortunately, we're saying all these positive things. I don't know how it was for you, Beeper, but for me, this show had such a slow start.
I was surprised how little happened by the time you got to the third episode, but after that, it did seem to pick up a little bit. And I don't want to get into spoilers yet for like the end of the show, but I do think it really helped the finale to have that slow start. I have a couple of gripes about the finale for other things, but I do think that like just it allowed the finale to be as long as it was, because I feel like if I don't want to give spoilers, but like the big event that was happening on Ferrix would not have people wouldn't have had the patience to sit through that event taking as long if you hadn't set up the characters and the planet and why people cared as well as they did. So I think for what they ended up doing in the show, it was kind of necessary, but yeah, it was a little bit slow. But I also, by the time I started watching, I think there were like 5 or 6 episodes out because I didn't watch it at the beginning, so maybe that helped me.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the way a show starts really leaves an impact on how many people will watch it.
Yeah.
Because I was following the Nielsen ratings, like the ranking of online watching shows. Andor never got before like 7th or 6th place. Like when The Mandalorian first came out, it was like the number 1 show people were watching on streaming.
Right, yeah. But again, I think it's not necessarily entirely a bad thing. Like, it's bad for the ratings, and it might not bode well for the way the show keeps going forward. But I think the way it was constructed did have a lot of good things. And I think it was for the first time Disney trusting a Star Wars franchise to be an original story. And
yeah, but if no one watches it, they're not gonna make. I mean, this show has been clearly articulated to say the first season is Andor's first year as a rebel, and then season 2 is going to cover the second 4 years, like basically leading right into Rogue One. So like they're not going to make more than 2 seasons of this, but
I think that's the point, is they know what they're doing with it. And honestly, like I did look up like the ratings for the episodes, like even though like not the ratings, but like the critical score, and in that regard, it's doing very well. And I think because it's a streaming show, that will have an effect. Like people will probably like there's more buzz around it indirectly, and I think that will make people watch it. More so than, The Mandalorian was immediately, oh, you got to watch this. But this is like, oh yeah, no, you should watch this. And maybe we can add to that discussion, because I do think people should watch the show more so probably than The Mandalorian, in some ways.
Yeah, I think in terms of quality content, this is better than The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian, I guess, has more fan service and more flashy.
Yeah, The Mandalorian was and that's the thing. The Mandalorian was a good Star Wars TV show. This is just a good TV show set in the Star Wars universe.
That's a good way of articulating it.
And I think that's one of the big strengths of this show, is that they wanted to make a good show set in the Star Wars universe. And I think I don't know if this is going to happen, but I think there's a sleeper fan base of Star Wars people who were fans of the extended universe who are really going to appreciate this. I, not being a fan of it myself, I don't know if it necessarily took a lot of inspiration from the EU, but it feels a lot more like that kind of content, where it was like you might have a main character somewhere in it, but it is more about the Star Wars universe as a whole. And I think people were hoping for that kind of content. And and there were hints of it, like I said, in Rogue One. There were hints of it in The Last Jedi. They tried really hard to try to do stuff like that in the And the prequel trilogy did give hints that ended up being explored in the Clone Wars pretty well, and people did enjoy that. That is an aspect of Clone Wars that people enjoyed a lot, was that there were a lot of episodes that just focused on the Star Wars universe within the setting of the war, but still it was more about the people and how the global effect of a small story that we've seen is happening. And I think that's there is definitely an audience for that, and I'm hoping that they will appreciate this for what it is and kind of go more into it.
Now, which like I said, I feel like this season kind of has like three main story arcs. There's like the Hunt for Cassian Andor, Escape from Ferric story arc. Then there's like the heist story arc, and then there's like the prison arc. And then the kind of like the epilogue. It honestly felt like a season of anime to me, wherein, over the course of like a 12 episode or 13 episode season, you might get a couple short mini arcs or a couple like stories that span several episodes. So did you see that connection? And did you have a favorite story arc?
I did not see that connection, but then again, I've also watched less modern anime than you, so I still mostly have watched like stuff from the 90s and 2000s before that became a thing, like where a storyline might take a season and a half. But I do see what you mean. And I think my favorite was the first. Was like, yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed the slow burn a little bit. Like, I don't know, like it's not that the other ones were bad or anything, and I enjoyed the prison one probably second most. I don't know, heists I find are a little overplayed, but like, and again, not to say that it was bad or anything. It might also have to do with like how I watched it. I was a bit more focused on the first few episodes, and then I kind of like went pretty quickly through the rest of it. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe, and I probably will. I almost certainly will rewatch this because I want to watch it with Mjolnir, and she didn't watch it with me, so any of it with me. So I do think I will rewatch it, but I don't know. I liked the character building, the world building that was kind of happening, whereas I felt like there was a bit more of like trying to make connections with the other two storylines, especially the heist storyline. And it wasn't bad. It just, to me, it felt again like the show was not relying on itself and trying to. I think the show is at its best when it is an individual show where they're letting like good writing, good acting, good storytelling work. And it's not always bad that it's making connection, but some of them feel a bit more forced than others.
I love me a good heist.
Yeah, that's fair.
But beyond the heist, there was so much political intrigue around that heist because the amount of like distrust there were even among the team who were performing the heist I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, that's true. Like I can see that. Like it didn't specifically appeal to me, but I definitely see the appeal of like all three arcs and of the heist in particular. I just think it's just not my
we're allowed to like different
favorite
things
kind of thing. Yeah.
Now, aside from Andor himself, like whose story that we followed throughout the season did you enjoy the most?
Man, I can never remember his name. The super gung ho security guy who goes back to his mom.
Cyril Karn.
That's it.
I only know that because I'm looking at the list. I too had a hard time remembering the names of most of the characters.
Yeah,
so I have the list open.
I really liked him. I don't know why. He's not. I just thought he was just. I thought he was an interesting character in the sense that he is, that kind of like. I feel like in the second season he's gonna have a "Are we the bad guys?" moment, because he just feels like he is gonna because he's doing a lot of things for the right reasons, right? Like, or at least what he perceives to be the right reason. He's not like an outright evil person. He's just definitely on the wrong side of the story, but you kind of feel for him because, especially his first appearance, it's like, we're a security company and two of our employees were killed and we need to get to the bottom of this because this is something that's important. This is why I have this job. And like, yeah, he's a bit of a stick in the mud and he's a little bit annoying for it. But because he grows a little bit beyond that, you're like, oh yeah, you know what? He he kind of was right. Like if you decontextualize what happened from the rebellion, he was right. Did he react the best way? No. Is he working for a regime that is oppressive and uses force? Yes, but that's not necessarily his fault. But I do think they're setting him up. Even if it doesn't happen, it'll be okay. But I do think they're kind of setting him up for a "Are we the bad guys?" moment, where he's like, "Ah, wait a minute, the Empire is kind of," and it might happen. Given what happens in the finale, he might start getting that pretty quickly in the second season.
And you know what? Thanks to him, all his scenes with his mom gave us all our blue milk Easter eggs that we were craving.
Yes, that's sure. That's what people wanted.
What do you think the flavor of that blue milk is?
I think it just tastes like milk.
It's just colored blue?
Yeah.
Oh, I want it to be like blueberry or blue raspberry or something.
No, I think it. Well, it's because it's kind of like the weird manatee green milk. It just comes from an animal, so it probably is just milk. Just has a weird coloration because of something, and it probably doesn't change the taste that much.
Right. I really liked Mon Mothma's story. This is a character I've never really cared about. She's been in Rebels. She's been in Rogue One. She was obviously a character in Return of the Jedi, played by a different actress. And so this is like the most screen time she's ever had. And I just found her whole dynamic very interesting. She's a senator in the Imperial Senate. She wants to support the rebels, but she can't. She's having a hard time moving her money around. I thought that was just very interesting. The fact that she's under so much scrutiny and like there's spies watching her and she has to be careful like everything she does. And you get into some of the dynamics of her relationship with her husband and her daughter and her sister and her cousin.
Yeah.
And
that was an interest. Like, I think that was a more compelling storyline just for a character that I didn't enjoy as much. And again, not because it was bad, just because I don't know, something grabbed me about the other one.
Like now when I watch Rogue One or when I watch Return of the Jedi and I see her character, I'm like, I respect you now. Like I understand what you've been through.
Yeah, and I think that's a good, it's one of the better things a prequel can do, right? Is prequels are best when they can recontextualize the original without taking away from it. Right? And I think that's what this does for her. It adds to what she is. Like an existing character, it adds to her, but without retroactively making her more important than she was, just by kind of explaining and showing the personal importance this had for an existing character.
Andy Serkis has a role in this show.
Yeah, that's probably also why I put the prison part above the heist.
Now, this is my fan theory.
Yeah.
Andy Serkis previously portrayed Supreme Leader Snoke in the sequel trilogy.
Right.
Maybe, we'll get into the spoilerverse in a minute, but I think there's a case that can be made that his character in this show becomes Snoke.
Gets grown into several Snokes.
Yeah. And I think that is a good point as any to jump into the spoilerverse. If you want to avoid any spoilers for season 1 of Andor, we highly recommend watching it. There'll be a time code in the description to skip around these spoilers. He can't swim, so he can't get off the prison, which makes me think he gets recaptured, and he basically becomes like a test subject for experimentation, and then that's how you end up with Snoke.
Okay, I can see that. That being said, he doesn't look like Snoke at all. He looks like Andy Serkis. Like, this is not. I don't know.
Maybe they rip out his vocal cords and they, use his voice as the foundation for Snoke.
Maybe, but I feel like it is just Andy Serkis wants to be in more Star Wars stuff because he likes it. But
Well, I guess you can have different people in the same. Like, there's lots of people in the world who sound similar to somebody else. That's just my little fan theory.
yeah, no, I don't. I'm not dissing it, and who knows? It's Star Wars. They've done more ridiculous things for less. But I don't know. But it just feels like if it does happen, it's gonna be kind of tragic because it means, yeah, he never escaped, and then not only did he never escape, which he dreaded towards the end, but on top of that, he's immortalized as something else that the Empire made.
Mm. The show almost lost me in the first episode when he kills the two guys, because
Really?
the way in which one of them dies, it looks like he just headbutts him and then he's like dead.
Well, he
And I was like,
he
what is
headbutts him, and
going-
then he slips on the ground and breaks his neck. I mean,
it
it's
seemed
a cliche,
goofy to me.
but yeah,
But thankfully, yeah, the show got better.
but it's
so
also, but it is kind of necessary for the rest of the show to happen that he accidentally kills one.
Oh yeah, like that is the focusing event by which
Yeah.
the whole story becomes, because then it draws the security guy in and it draws all this attention to him. What did you think about the reveal that, after they've done the heist, that the one guy's like, tries to ask Andor to take the money and run?
I thought
Like, did you see that coming? I was surprised.
oh no, yeah, I didn't see it coming. Like, because of the mistrust, there was a lot of like potential for something to happen. That's not what I was expecting to happen, though. Like, I thought that maybe there'd be, more plot twist or more betrayals or like, double agents seeking each other kind of thing, but not just a take the money and run kind of aspect of it. Like, Andor's reaction was kind of predictable ish because, well, you do know he ends up staying with the rebels, so you do know, like, and that is something that I kind of not have an issue with, but it is a little bit, prequel things. You need to build stakes around something different than will some of these characters survive, because everybody knows they do. So I think that was an interesting way of building it up, but at the same time, it's like, well, we know Cassian doesn't take the money and run because he's in Rogue One, right?
Yeah, but to me, it's like there's enough time between this and Rogue One where I'm like, it could take
That's
a while
true.
for him to come around.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, he could have taken it and run and still got arrested, and the show could.
Oh wait, he did.
Well, yeah, but he didn't. But he wasn't. Well, yeah, I know, but he was trying to do the right thing when he did.
Yes.
Like, but they could have had him do the wrong thing and then add a little bit more. Because, I mean, the rebels are still, in the last episode, trying to kill him for what he knows anyway. So they could also try to kill him because of, he stole the money too. Like, you could add more onto it if you wanted to.
Yeah, I really enjoyed him as like the reluctant hero. The fact that he saw no point in getting involved with the rebellion.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a Han Solo kind of thing. He's out for his own interest, and there's a lot of money involved, and so he's convinced. But then I think his redemption arc is a little. Well, I mean, takes longer because it's in a TV show and is more sympathetic because, Han Solo had to do it quickly in 1.5 movie.
Well, I think, I mean, I could be wrong, but I think for Cassian, it wasn't that he was apathetic towards the cause. He was hopeless. He didn't think there was any chance they would actually win. So he was like, why bother wasting your time?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but there is a certain, like, yes, Han Solo is a lot more callous about it, but there is something about him that is a little desperate, right? Because that is part of why he doesn't stay. It's not like, it's less explicit, but there is a little bit of like, yeah, he could have just stayed around for one space battle, which he could have, he's a good pilot. He's very cocky and confident in his skills. He's like, yeah, I would have survived this, but doesn't. And I think that, is a little bit telling of what he thought the chances of survival were. But you're right. It is a slightly different arc, and it is a little bit more hope building up rather than being like, this might be the right thing to do.
Were you surprised to see Saw Gerrera in this show?
That's the ventilator guy?
Yeah, that's Forrest Whitaker.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Yes and no. I think they used him well. Although it did seem a little bit like tacking on. Like, I understand why it was, the prequel of the Rebel Alliance, but they kind of did that with his character already in Rogue One. So,
well, he was in Star Wars Rebels too, and he's.
Oh, that's true. I forgot about it.
They show him basically as a more radical. Again, it kind of brings back the Xavier, Magneto, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr. Like, just the fact that there are more severe approaches to trying to resolve the conflict. And it also, his very presence and his philosophy shows how divided at this point the rebellion is.
Yeah, but like you said, he's in other things, so it wasn't like necessary.
I was just surprised to
have
see him. I was like, Forrest Whitaker's a big actor, so like to get him in to play like a minor parts in the show was surprising.
Yeah, but cameos in Star Wars still have a certain prestige, somewhat. Although movies more so than I guess the TV shows. But I think this TV show might again boost that a little bit again.
I also thought the whole system they came with for how that prison works, I thought that was very creative. Even getting to the point of like taking away their shoes is very symbolic of taking away a person's freedom.
Yeah, no, the prison was good, and the reveal was a little bit predictable. I don't know, I kind of saw it coming, but it still worked well. I think they put a bit too much emphasis on the like whole, it's my last week on the job, I'm finally getting out of here. It's like, oh, come on, man. We've seen this. We know where this is going.
All right, you had grips with the final episode. Let's get into it.
Well, sequel baiting in general, I think, and like, so there's a difference between leaving open plot lines in case you get a second season and directly making your finale rely on a next season. Like, I think there should have been a little bit more resolution to what happens at the end of the season. And like, I'm a little bit torn because there is an aspect of it that is like, yeah, they probably already knew there was a second season and they probably planned this as a 2-season thing. And so they are kind of doing what they want to do. And maybe this is just what's going to happen with streaming service TV shows, as opposed to real TV, like to traditional TV shows, is that they do have a story and they'll see it to the end. But it did feel a little bit like, usually the first season of a show wraps up a little bit more, because even Loki still ended with a difference in status quo rather than a potential something is going to change. Like, we all know, that Cassian is going to eventually become a rebel and be in the cause and everything, but the last scene just left hanging. And even the events of the last episode didn't really resolve anything. They just set all of them. It seems like everything in the finale was setting up for something else, which just feels like, again, you're relying on suspense for people to watch the second season instead of relying on the fact that you have created a good story. And so that's what I mean when I say sequel baiting, is that I didn't think you needed to do that with this show. The show was well written. The show ran well. I feel like it would have been better to have a bit more of a satisfactory resolution to the season finale rather than just leaving everything open, even if it is, because you can either do the darkest hour at the end of a season or the uplifting moment, but I don't think that they showed enough victory over the Empire, even if it's a small one in just this random system, to warrant it being a victorious thing, but there wasn't enough direct characters are in trouble for it to be a darkest hour either. So it just kind of fell flat, I found. Like the buildup was amazing. The entire, like the whole buildup for the funeral, like I said, I think totally justifies the slow burn of the first few episodes because you care about a lot of these characters. You know who they are. You know why they care about this. And you know why this becomes important. And everything in the season kind of has build up to Marva's speech. And I think that was excellent. It just, after that, it should have been, I think, a little bit more of a crescendo and a little bit more satisfying, and it wasn't. And it just feels like it wasn't because they were forcing open-endedness to get people to watch the sequel. And that just, I don't know, it just felt a little weird to me. I also I watched the last episode earlier this morning because I just hadn't gotten time to get to it, so it is pretty fresh in my memory. But I don't know, it felt like it could have been a little bit more epic, a little more conclusive, and the show wouldn't have lost anything, and people would still watch the second season without, you know, the first episode of the next season having to establish where all the characters are.
So I'll attempt to paraphrase. It felt, instead of a season finale, it felt like episode 12, and then what will be season 2, episode 1 will just feel like episode 13.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It almost felt like it was missing an episode to finish the season because of that. And again,
yeah, that's interesting.
And again, it's maybe just because we're used to the way network TV made TV shows, because you wouldn't have, like, you might get a season finale like this for a show if it's in its like third or fourth season and it knows it's getting renewed and it can do something a little bit more like the next episode will pick up where this one dropped off. But usually that's not how the first season of a show ends.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of all the major characters and like where are they ending? So Cassian, he ends with basically committing to the Rebel Alliance.
Yeah.
Cyril and Deidre kind of end the season both
In
at
a
a low
room.
point and discovering each other, I guess, in a
But they're
way.
just, that's the thing, they're just in a room. It's just like next episode that, like, either they're gonna have to be somewhere together escaping the planet or just in that room still in a state of semi-panic. You know, there's
I
no
think
conclusion for them.
Well, the conclusion for Deidre is that the whole season she was it was like she was moving up. She was moving up the corporate ladder. She was impressing a lot of people. And now the egg is all over her face. She has failed hard. And now she's going to have to rely on this weasel to move forward.
Yeah. But that's the thing, is that that's going to have to happen next season. There's no, like, they could have at least gotten off the planet together and then have like just this one scene where she's relying on him and it's a victory for him and it's a lower point for her.
Right.
You know, that's what I mean. Like, it's, again, it's not
I see what
bad.
you're
It's
saying.
just, I feel like that's where it should end rather than just they're in a room hyperventilating because there's a riot going on around them. And the other Weasley dude got stabbed, so he doesn't see that was more conclusive.
Even though I didn't say he was my favorite character, I did really enjoy Stellan Skarsgård as Luthen.
Yeah.
He seemed so unrelenting in what he stood for, but then you see moments where he is questions like, what am I even doing? Is this going to work? And there is even though he comes across as confident around other people, you can clearly tell he's feeling a little desperate when he's by himself.
Yeah, which, I mean, I think it was good characterization because, like, he needs to project that confidence because he is in charge of people trying to bring hope. So even if he's hopeless, he has to, himself hope that his hope will inspire others.
Do you have any idea why he was on Ferrix at the end? Was he just hoping he was going to run into Cassian?
I think they established that he knew Cassian was there, or he at least knew
Well,
about the
everyone
funeral.
thought Cassie was. That's why everyone was there. 'cause
Well,
they
yeah,
thought-
I think it was just because of that. Because he was watching to find him.
Gotcha. So coming around to final thoughts, Andor did something I never thought would be possible. It made me care about the evil aunt from Harry Potter. I'd only ever really seen Fiona Shaw as the evil aunt from Harry Potter, so seeing her as like a good guy here, good job, show. This series was created
in Harry Potter, so
yes. This series was created by Tony Gilroy, who was one of the writers of Rogue One. So I got to give Tony props. This is probably I'll make that claim. This is probably the best Star Wars TV show that has been made for Disney Plus.
I will second that, especially after the way season 2 of The Mandalorian kind of went.
So in terms of Bat Cookies, I'll give season 1, and this has been confirmed. It's going to have a second season, so we know it's going to continue. Unlike, we don't know if there probably won't be more Obi-Wan or Boba Fett, but for season 1 of Andor, I'm going to give it 3.5 out of 4 Bat Cookies.
Yeah, I was going to give it exactly that, so I'll stick with it. I won't be different. I'll give it a 3.5 out of 4 Bat Cookies.
So Andor season 1 is now streaming on Disney Plus. I found it had a very slow start. The first 3 episodes are kind of difficult to get through, but Beeper enjoyed that slow burn, slower pace. So if you're more like me, you might find the beginning difficult. If you're like Beeper, it won't be a problem.
Stick with it. The payoff is worth it.
Yes. So many interesting characters going on their own journeys, and this is this is also surprising for me. I said it when we talked about Obi-Wan. The Jedi have always been my favorite part of Star Wars. Not a single Jedi, not a single lightsaber anywhere in this show.
And
yet I still really like it.
Jedi character like Donnie Yen was in Rogue One.
Yeah, there's not even one of I don't even think we hear mention of the Force once.
Yeah, there are security officers, but how familiar are you with not Stormtrooper. Now I can't remember the name of the movie. Space Trooper? No.
Spaceballs?
No. The movie with the bugs.
Starship Troopers.
Starship Troopers. Wow, I can't believe I blanked on that.
I mean, I know the name of the movie.
Okay, yeah. Oh, it's an excellent movie. We should talk about it at some point because it is really good, but better than it should be. But it's just, there was just this moment that just reminded me of we can ill afford another Clendathu, which when they're talking about a failure, and when they're talking about setting up the funeral on Ferric, so we can't have another, what is it, Anduil? No, that's but
names
yeah,
are the names are hard to remember.
there was a little bit of campiness on the Imperial side, like the Imperial Security Council, that I was just like, you know what, this is good. It wasn't funny camp, but it was just enough to be like, oh yeah, these guys are overconfident and are due for a downfall, and I like that.
If you want to reach the show, you can send us an email at
batjarpodcast@gmail.com.
Or you can tweet us at
The Bat Cookie Jar.
You can find the Bat Jar Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube, because we got a channel. Share our posts on Facebook, write reviews, give our shows a rating. This will help all people join us inside the Bat Jar, and we appreciate it dearly.
For our episode in 2 weeks, we could talk about Black Panther Wakanda Forever, or we could talk about Andor, because I think by that point the last episode will have aired.
So our next episode, we will be talking about Black Panther Wakanda Forever. At the point that episode comes out, the movie will have been out in theaters for about a month, so you'll have lots of time to go see the movie before we talk about it.
But you are highly invested in our opinion on things, so you'll either you'll still listen to our episode, or you'll wait until our episode comes out to see if you want to catch it on streaming.
So come back to the Batshare Podcast next time when we talk about Black Panther Wakanda Forever. And until that time, I'm Average Joe.
I'm Beef Pork Ribs.
Catch you on the flip side.
The Empire festers in darkness.